You are listening to 91.7 KPSU, Goodwill, Oklahoma, the Tie Fly and the Doug Bug Show. And for once, all three of us this semester, Daddy Dave in the studio with us. And you can kind of jump in on the stuff. David, go ahead and give them the email that they can email us at.
Well, if you've got any questions or anything that you want to talk about with us, disagree with us, please. We welcome all sorts of debate. Shoot us an email at kpsusports@gmail.com. We will be glad to read your email on the air and make fun of you or not. It depends on if we agree with what you have to say. But yeah, shoot us an email. We'll talk about it.
Our big headline, and this is no surprise, it's NCAA tournament time and the Sweet 16 underway. Let's start off with the Cornell-Kentucky game. Let's get your guys' thoughts about it.
Cornell just played scared most of the game. I mean, they sent everyone back on defense. They didn't try to get an offensive rebound. And they still gave up a lot of fast break points.
I don't know. I think that Cornell made a statement even in defeat. You know, they held Kentucky to 60 points. And most of those, I say most of them, a third of those were from the free throw line.
And Kentucky's not a good free throw team.
Right. I think, what did it end up being? 19 of 27 or something from the free throw line. That means that just regular baskets, they held Kentucky to 16 shots made the entire game. Even though they lost. That's a statement, and I think it showed vulnerability in the Kentucky team, who is, I think, by any account, the strongest team left in this tournament.
Yeah, I have to agree with that.
You definitely have to think of the equation to beat number one, because we have seen two number one seeds go down this tournament already, with Butler and Northern Iowa. These teams that are in mid-major conferences go ahead and knock off the number ones. And how did they do it? They played the opposing team's strengths. Now, when I say that, you look at last night's Butler-Syracuse game, Butler attacked that 2-3 zone. A lot of people said Butler has to sit back and shoot threes if they want to win the game. And yeah, they did have to do that to win it. But they attacked the zone and got a lot of points. Yeah, there was some shots that got rejected, but also those were rejected fouls. And the guy went to the line and shot two and made them anyways. And so I thought Butler played that way. And the other way you play against a number one seed is you don't play scared. You don't play like they're the number one seed. And that goes back to the Northern Iowa game. If you're playing a number one seed and you're on a fast break up by, 2 points at the time, do you shoot a wide open three with like 30 seconds left on the clock?
If you're scared,
you don't shoot that if you're scared.
You don't shoot it at all. Yeah, you wait for them to foul you. Right.
Exactly, but then the guy goes ahead and just puts it up.
Without hesitation.
Well, but you got to think, too, Farouk Manesh was just on fire in that game. I mean, he had a stretch where he had cooled off, but he had two really big streaks. He had the one streak at the beginning of the game where he went 6 for 7. Then he had the stretch where he went 1 for 8. But he never lost his confidence, and he was wide open, and that's all he does is make key three-point shots. I think that he had no choice but to take that shot. They were giving it to him. They dared him to shoot it, and he's like, okay, fine. You're not going to guard me. You're going to leave me wide open. I'm the best three-point shooter in the country. Take this. See you later.
And Kansas' strength this year was their defense and offense. And Kansas played great defense, but so did Northern Iowa.
Right, and that was, it was a lower scoring game than people anticipated, but what would you expect in a game with those two teams?
They both defense leads to their offense, and Northern Iowa's defense was a lot better than Kansas.
I would have liked to see Cornell though not play scared like they did. I would have liked to see, because I was pretty surprised when CBS finally changed over to that game and I could watch it, of the size of Cornell. They were a lot taller than the Kentucky players, and all they had to do was get under and box out. But then when there's only one person down there and everyone else is so worried about the fast break, they're going backwards, you're giving up those second opportunity baskets that could have changed the game. And you saw they came off right off the bat. They were up 10-2 or something right off the beginning of the game. They weren't scared, and then they looked up and said, wow, we're not supposed to beat Kentucky. And then it was in their head, we're not supposed to beat Kentucky, and Kentucky went ahead and beat them.
But in the second half, Cornell was a different team. They weren't the same team that showed up in the first half who was scared.
Or the first 2 rounds, for that matter. But, here's the thing that I'm kind of looking forward to seeing with Cornell down the road. They're only losing 1 starter this year.
But they're losing 9 seniors.
But they're only losing 1 starter.
Yeah. But they can only get better because recruit.
Right.
The only bad thing, though, is that 1 starter is their best player.
Right. But, here's the thing. Cornell's disadvantage with recruiting is they're not an athletic school. Their school could care less about basketball.
But if they do well,
right? But what I'm saying is, to recruit someone to Cornell to play basketball, they still have to be a 33 ACT and a 1450 SAT. How many of those are there out there?
Not
really?
many.
Right.
And then when you get to that point, you have options. You can go to Stanford.
Right.
And be in a big Pac-10
Rice,
conference.
Yeah. There are other options, and the other Ivy League schools. And the fact is, if you're looking at Ivy League schools, Cornell is not going to be the top one on your list because you've got Harvard and Yale and Brown and Dartmouth and Princeton. That all come to mind first.
But it just depends on where they're from too.
Well, sure, right. But I think there's so many different storylines in this tournament as a whole. And Ty, I don't want to throw you off your schedule, but I do want to talk for a second about the lack of blowout games in this tournament. It just seems like every year they're even in the Sweet 16 round, you have 30-point games, and they just haven't been here. They just have not been here this year.
Kentucky did do it in the first 2 rounds.
Sure, right.
59 total points.
Right. But that was against what, North Texas? No.
East
Tennessee State, right.
And Wake Forest.
Right. In the Wake Forest game, a lot of people had Wake Forest out of the tournament anyway. Some people believe that they didn't belong there.
I was kind of along that line.
Right, but by and large, there just haven't been the blowouts.
West Virginia is probably the only team I can think of.
Well, I know I sent Ty a message last night and I told him I think West Virginia is the best team left in the tournament.
Yeah, definitely.
The best offensive rebounding team. They win because they rebound.
Sure.
They had first half, Washington limited the offensive rebounds. Washington was winning. Second half, I saw West Virginia had over 15 rebounds, offensive rebounds. And 40% of their rebounds, they missed. They get like 4% of their misses.
Well, and it was surprising that Washington did so well in that first half because Quincy Pondexter was in foul trouble and only played 7 minutes.
But what does that say about the rest of Washington's team?
That they're pretty stacked everywhere else if your star player can go out and you still have a lead.
But they lived to the preseason hype, like in the first half. They were supposed to be like this. 14th starting the season, but it went down once Pac-10.
Well, and they were talking about in the Pac-10 tournament, the announcers were talking about how Washington has just underachieved all year long.
Yeah.
Until the Pac-10 tournament when they decided, oh yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and strap on our shoes and play now. Lorenzo Lomar is turning out to be, I don't know. I'd say he's turning out to be a pretty good coach, but not if you can't motivate his guys to play.
They should have been a lot higher seed than they were having.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. They should have been. The other question that I have, and Ty, I want to direct this one at you because I know neither one of us have talked about them at all. St. Mary's. Still alive and going. What do you think about this?
That's just the team that... I don't know if anybody can't figure out the big. And now I can't remember...
Samhan.
Yeah,
Omar
Samhan.
Samhan.
Yeah. I don't know why no one can figure out Omar, because he's just a big guy, and
he's not even that big.
Yeah, but it seems like every
but
team seems to struggle with them.
But the one team that I don't think will be Baylor, just because they're tall inside. Their small forward is like 6'10". He's not really small.
Right.
You got an average height team of 6'7" in Baylor.
Right. And and I guess and I don't know if you're planning on going through and breaking down each of these teams individually. Are you?
Well, yeah, that was coming up next. And we actually have to now, because we took so long on the Cornell Kentucky game, we actually have to go back to a song break. So we will come back and finish up last night's and talk about tonight's performances. Until then, Lady Gaga.